Hello, good evening, and welcome to That's the Spirit Christmas special with me, Reverend Linda Rauch, and the esteemed Julian Jenkins. And what we're going to be doing tonight is we are going to turn the tables and we're going to interview Julian and find out all about his life. And here we go. Julian, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, not bad. This feels a little bit strange.
Yeah, I was going to say, how does it feel to be on the other side of the table?
I'm scared what questions you're going to ask me.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
That looked like a scene from Austin Powers, like Dr. Evil or something like that, you know.
I'm a reverend. I'm not evil.
Okay, yeah, okay,
Only
fine.
in little amounts.
Only tiny amounts, yeah.
Only tiny amounts. Right. Well, it's really brilliant that we're doing this. I think it's great because you have done a fantastic job interviewing a whole bunch of people, and it's really nice to sometimes see what's behind the mission and who you are to have brought you to this place where you've decided to find out about other people's lives. So, this is an opportunity to find out about yours and your spiritual journey. So I want to start off by asking you a question, which I know has come up with some of your guests that you've talked about, but can you just begin by talking about when you first connected with spirit and what was the moment, if there was one, or the period of time where you really started to feel that divine presence?
It's a good question. It's the one I always ask. So I always think to myself, wonder what my answer would be. I was 5 years of age, and I'd say I was 5. It could have been 4. It could have been 6, but it was around 3 to 6. And I used to lay in bed as a child, and I remember it quite vividly. And I'd be laying in bed, and all of a sudden I'd close my eyes, and I have this complete recurring dream. And I'd have a gentleman that would come to the end of my bed every evening, and he would hold his hands out and he would lift me up in his arms and we'd go away. And the only way I can best describe this gentleman is he looks like the man off Uncle Ben's Rice. Okay, that's the best way I can describe him. And every night he'd come and he would be with me. And, that must have gone on for, I don't know, I might have been 8, 9 or 10 years of age. And once that stopped, then I used to lay in bed. And if I laid on my back, I'd have all of these people talking to me. I'd have all these noises and things going on, and I'd be having conversations. But if I wanted to go to sleep, if I laid on my side, it would all stop, which was really strange, really. And even as a child, I used to have a really vivid imagination. This gentleman used to take me places, and I can remember once going to school, and I wasn't very old, and we were doing something about, I think it was about the pyramids or something like that. And the teacher was like, I can remember it vividly, it's weird, but I can remember the teacher talking about it. And I was like, I was already drawing and writing. And she's like, how does he know that? And it all come back to that. I'd been to this gentleman would take me to the pyramids, and he'd take me around all of these places, several occasions. And I lived in a really, a difficult area in Cardiff called Ely. And in those days, there's still not a great deal of money. It's the largest council estate in Europe. And for a child of 6 years of age to be going to the pyramids, it was unheard of, because nobody ever went anywhere apart from, the local beach or camping or something like that. So, the teacher was always a bit mystified. But I used to say, look, I've been there. And I honestly did feel as if I had been there. And as a child, that's when I first started having, these spiritual moments. And I didn't really know what they were. But all I knew was it was normal. And that feeling of not being normal, for me, was actually normal.
So did you talk to anybody about it?
I think it's difficult, isn't it? As a child, I sort of kept, a lot of the things in. I remember my sister used to call him, I used to talk to my sister, and she used to say his name was Poco Moco. And that was a name. And it's weird because I can't remember it, but now actually when we start talking about it, it all comes back. And Poco Moco was this gentleman who used to come. But as a kid, when you're talking to a kid who's 3, 4, 5, 6 years of age, and they're talking about somebody coming into your bedroom or in a dream, then that's your imaginary friend. That's somebody who's always with you. But I knew it was more than that, and I knew it was more than that for a number of reasons, because of the depth of what I used to see and feel, but also, just coming back to this point of like laying on my back in bed, I'd have so much going on. It was unreal. and as a child, I used to suffer from convulsions. I remember going to the doctors once, and they put this rubber hat on my head, and they had all these electrodes coming up my hat, and they were measuring my my brain signals, and because I was just so active, I was just so all the time, and for an age they tried to, they gave me drugs. They gave me, as a child, I don't know what it was, erythromycin, or it was something to do with, for me, it was like trying to calm me down and stop these. Probably. Yeah, Mycilin. They're trying to stop some of these convulsions, and trying to stop the level of brain activity in my mind. And now I look back on it and I think, wow, you know what I mean? It was, it actually, now, even when I'm talking about it, there's some penny drop moments here in this interview thinking, wow, that probably was all of the activity from spirit. Yeah.
What was going on?
What was going on? And the medical profession didn't know. And I'm talking about it now, and then even more pennies are dropping. And I'm just thinking, yeah, I remember as a kid. And the problem was, as a child, they was giving me all these medicines to try and stem the brain activity. And because of that, I lost all my teeth as a kid, because there was because of the sugar content was so high. So, and that's, I had a phobia to dentists, because I went to the dentist one time and they took 9 teeth out in one go. Oh my goodness. And I was like 9-10 years of age. But, as I say, really weird, even when I'm talking about it now, it's all sort of flipping into space, really, and into pieces. And, that's where I was. And now I know a little bit more. Thanks for the question.
So did you feel like you were an unusual kid? I mean, convulsions and visions and special friends.
Yeah, I think a child's a child, though, aren't they? And I think again, living in the area of Cardiff that I lived in, you had to be very malleable anyway. It was, I've talked about before when I did a piece talking about faith. And faith to me is not just faith in God, but faith in people, and importantly, faith in relationships, faith in loyalty, and faith in friendship. You had to have faith in people where I lived, because it was a really tough place to grow up. And a lot of my friends then are still very much my friends today, and that's all of those relationships are sort of based on faith. Was I a little bit different? Probably. I think I was lucky, though, because I had sport, and in particular I had football, and football allowed me to be normal in terms of playing football, because I could mix with everybody, because I was talking with my feet and not talking with my mouth.
Right, that makes sense. So do you come from a line of mediums? Are there other psychic people in your family that you know of?
Well, again, interestingly, it wasn't until I was thinking about this recently that my father and my brother, and I'll tell those stories a little bit later on, but my father and my brother used to go, as my mum used to call it, the spook school, which I can only assume was a development circle. Unfortunately, my father's passed away. But I remember my mum didn't really get on with my father's side. And I'll be honest, my mum was quite a difficult character. God bless her. She's passed away as well. And so when we used to go to my grandfather's, I would just always go with my dad. It was always me, my dad, and my brother and sister. I got a brother and sister. Very rarely did I ever go to my grandfather's with my brother and sister. But my dad used to always take me then to my grandmother's sister. Her name was Lily, Auntie Lily, Uncle Ken. And Auntie Lily was always in a wheelchair. And it wasn't until probably 6 to 12 months ago, when I was talking about things, that I realized what was happening. I used to go to my Auntie Lily's, and you remember that in those days, the back room was sort of where you lived, and the front room was the parlor. And nobody was allowed to go in there apart from christenings, deaths, or whatever the scenario was, or Christmas. But I was a bit of a blue-eyed boy in the family, because I looked like my dad's side. So whenever I went there, it was always easy for me. And she said, you can go and play in the parlor. And I was like, what? I'm allowed in there? And I can remember opening the door, but I remember there was a table over on the left-hand side. And looking back on it, only recently, I realized they were tarot cards. Oh, wow. That I used to actually play with tarot. I didn't know at the time, and I couldn't, as a kid, you wouldn't have known that. But yeah, I was definitely playing with tarot cards. So I can only make an assumption that my Auntie Lily was very much into spirit. She also, I'm saying this now and it's coming into me, is really strange. And now it's coming back even more, that I'm actually remember reading tea leaves. So as I'm talking now, even more is coming in. This is really weird. But I can remember her doing tea leaves, reading tea leaves. And she did have this gypsy look and feel about her. She did. Yeah. She was very Romany. And I've never thought about that until just now either. And because I do a lot of my family tree, and I'm trying to trace some of it back. But yeah, so my auntie was, I think so. My dad was into it. My brother is into it. So I think there has been a bit of a lineage, but I'm probably the one that's sort of jumped off the page a bit more and sort of held the beacon more than anybody in the family that I know of anyway.
So have you always kind of been interested in things like tarot cards and gone to spiritualist churches and esoteric pursuits, or is that something that kind of kicked in later on in life?
Well, as I said, I've always been with spirit, and even when I laid in bed, even, I always get those messages. And I was going out with a girl once, and I must have been 16, 17 years of age, 16 years of age, I would have thought. And there was a medium that came to our local memorial home. And at the time, this medium was very much at the forefront, next generation, I just have to Doris Stokes, that type of thing. His name was Stephen O'Brien, who was a Welsh medium. And I'm actually reading a number of books that I buy from Arthur Finley, and I'm actually reading Eric Hatton's autobiography now. And strangely enough, when I was flicking through his book, there's a gentleman there in the photograph, is Stephen O'Brien, who the person. So I was in this memorial hall of about 450 people, because it was big, and he was doing his mediumship. And all of a sudden, you used to have a runner in the audience with a microphone, but obviously in those days it was on a lead. So if you couldn't get to the middle, you'd have to get up and walk across a little bit. And he just stopped and he went, "That gentleman there, that boy there, come there, that boy there." And my girlfriend was like, "Oh my God, he's pointing at you." I was like, "What do you mean he's pointing at me?" And he said, "Have you got a question for me?" And I said, "No, I don't think I have." He said, "Yes, you have." I said, "No, I really don't think I have." He said, "No, you have." And I said, "Yeah, I probably have, actually. Why does all this happen to me?" And he said, "Because you are you, and you have to do what you need to do spiritually. Come and see me after the show." And I was like, "Wow, okay." And after the show, I just went and met him, and I remember he just put his hand here.
Wow.
And he just said, "Good luck, and on you go." And that was it, really. And ever since then, I sort of went into it a bit more, and I dipped in and dipped out, and because I've come from a very corporate background, very sports-based corporate background, and any sort of life from the physical gets in the way. But I've always gone to a church or been participant of a church, and then into development groups and things like that. So probably, I'm 45 now, so I've probably been practicing for probably almost 20 years, I would have thought.
Right. So that's quite unusual. I mean, you don't often go and meet people and they go up to you and do that.
No, and I didn't think about it at the time, but again, I assume he's just touching my third eye, I would have thought, and I've seen Stephen O'Brien since, and I've sort of never really broached the subject about it, but he probably met loads of people, and maybe done the same thing with lots of other people. But for me, it was one of those moments where I was like, yeah, it was all a bit much, really, for me at that age, I suppose.
So 16, 17, those kind of teenage years, were you continuing to have those not weird, they're not weird to us at all, but those unusual experiences? How did you integrate them into your life at the time? Did you use that information that you were tuning into?
Well, I can remember, so I played football. So when I was in school, I was football. So at 14 years of age, I'd signed schoolboy forms for Cardiff City Football Club. And then I went through till 16 years of age, left Cardiff, and within an hour I was at Swansea City. And there was a gentleman there who was the manager called Terry Yorath, and he left Swansea to go to Bradford City. So I went to Bradford City with Terry Yorath, and I was staying in a house, a big house, where they would put up footballers and trialists and things like that. And so I was always, even then, still, with the spiritual side, with religion, not religion, but more spiritual. And I remember having breakfast down there one day, and these two priests walked in, Irish priests. And I was like, well, what's this? And it was real. It wasn't a vision. They were real, and they sat down and they were talking, and I was talking. Of course, being spiritual, there's always that wanting to have a greater understanding of the religious element of it. And I said to them, because they were talking about God, and I said, well, why, when will God come to me then? When will he come to me? When will I have that big bright light and everything come to me? And they both looked at me and smiled and said, ask, and when you're ready, I'm sure it'll happen. So of course, as you do, I went to training, went back home, and I was living miles away from home in Bradford at exactly the same time as Salim Rushdie had brought out the Satanic Verses. So Bradford was a very interesting place to live at that time, because there was a lot of rioting and a lot of things like that going on. And I went back to my room, laid in my bed, and I thought, right, this is the time then, I'm gonna say, God, I'm ready now, come to me, and just wait for the big bright light and have to go. Nothing happened, and nothing really did happen, although I remember that conversation about ask, and when it's ready, it'll be. And it's only from a religious aspect. As I say, I'm more spiritual than religious. It's my dad used to joke, I'm an atheist, thank God. And that's the sort of mantra that I took a little bit. But as life come on now, I've become into religion more. But as a child playing football, professional football, that sort of took over my life. And then I made friends up north, and I came home, and I lived in Manchester for a while. So everything was on the back burner in terms of practicing. And you've got to remember as well, this was sort of early 90s, and in Manchester there was another religion that was taking place in the early 90s, and that was music. And so I was pretty much caught up in all of that. It wasn't until I came back from Manchester, sort of in the early-ish 90s, that I started to think about spiritualism and spirituality again, really.
So what happened there? Why did you get switched back into that particular path?
I lived, so I met my wife in 94. I was 21 years of age. I had my daughter at 23. And I just think it just felt right for me to start to think about it again. I wasn't doing a great deal with it, I'll be honest with you. But I always had it there. I always had this, feeling and understanding of what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. I wasn't massively practicing or going to circle or going to church, but what I was doing is I was sort of expanding my awareness, if you like, and using it. I had, a really rough time at 24, 25. I'd married into 2 children. I had my own daughter. We were living, I had to pay the mortgage, and at 24 with 3 kids, and, there was lots going on, albeit I have to admit, from the age of 16 to 21, I'd had, a very expansive life, and done a lot of things, and was very lucky and very blessed in that front. So I didn't feel I was missing out on anything. But, that was a difficult period. So I used spirituality to try and help me get through those moments, if you like, albeit still I wasn't really practicing, but I was starting to talk, to my guides and start to build a relationship with spirit, albeit that I wasn't, fully practicing or doing anything with it.
Do you remember how you came across the idea of talking to your guides? Where that came from?
Yeah, I was in, so I'm going to go back a little bit, because I was probably 15, 16 years of age when I met my first guide, and it's still my same guide, by the way. So I used to we used to live in a 3-bedroom house, albeit really, when you think about it, it was a 2.5 bedroom house, because the 3rd bedroom was like a broom cupboard. And I had to share the other bedroom with my brother, and my sister was in the broom cupboard. But as my sister and my brother left and all those sort of things, then I could expand and have more room. And I remember being in my bedroom, which was in the back, and I fell asleep, and I was asleep, and I remember vividly being asleep. But then I remember being awoken by something, and I couldn't remember what it was. But I was as if I was upright in bed, but I wasn't upright in bed. I was actually laying down, and I could see myself outside of my body, looking into the back garden. Although I was laying down in bed, and I was awake. I was definitely 100% awake. And my body stood up like that and looked out the window, and my guide walked down the path. Okay. And he walked into the house. Now, I didn't see him. Once he walked into the house, I didn't see him then. And then the body came back down, and I was like, well, what was that about? I could see my guide walking along the path, but I lost him when he came in the house. And I remember thinking to myself, what was that? And I didn't really say anything. And then it wasn't until some time after that I realized that it was my guide. And we had a relationship whereby he told me he would tell me everything one day, and that to trust him and to be with him. And his name was Rotag. Okay. But he said, it's too complicated for you. That is, call me Ronnie. So I always called him Ronnie, although his name was Rotag. So that's when I met my first guide. So it was again, I don't want to be stereotypical of this out-of-body experience meeting my guide, but I can only tell you actually what happened, and that's exactly what happened.
That's pretty amazing that something like that happened to a young lad, and you didn't freak out, or you didn't, it doesn't sound like you kind of went on a big journey to find out how, when, what. It sounds like you just kind of thought, oh, well, and just went along with it. Is that right? Or did it?
No, I did, but
again, some studying or?
No, I didn't, because in those days as well, mind, 15, 16 years of then, you didn't have the luxury of the internet or that sort of thing, really. So, I remember in our house, you had the Britannica books, and that's how you used to find out things. You didn't have Google then. You'd have the Britannica books. But I think because I'd been with spirit since, I've always had people, spirit with me. So the fact that something else happened to me was normal, although it wasn't normal. Right. And I think I could rationalize it more than anything else. And I used to see loads of stuff in our old house. I remember having my girlfriend around one night. I was 17 years of age or whatever, I can't remember. And we were downstairs on because like you had these two stairs that came down like that and met, then went down as one. And we were stood at the bottom of the stairs, and the whole house just lit and shook.
Wow.
And it was like, what? And I said, it's okay. I said, they're just coming close, and she's like, she was virtually halfway down the road, and she'd left her hair and everything in the house, it was like, it's like a cartoon moment, but it was okay for me. It didn't bother me, and I didn't even think about it.
So there was no fear. There was no, these strange forces. That's very interesting. I mean, I'm comparing it to my own journey where, I was scared of the things that I was feeling and experiencing because I had no context for it. But it doesn't sound like that was the case for you.
No, but I think the only way I can describe it, it was like I was a really young child when this first started. So it was like as if I'd been weaned onto it, and the first gentleman, I've never, he's never come back to me, was the gentleman from, Pokomoko, the Uncle Ben's rice man. So he, if you like, slowly, softly, catchy, just I was there, and it never really frightened me. I think, I can never remember being startled. I was never afraid of the dark. I was never afraid of ghosts. I was never afraid, because I just don't know. There's that whole, that calmness of it just being normal, and I remember, again, just sayings really, but I remember speaking to my grampy about it, and just saying, look, Gramp, these things. He said, don't worry. He said, it's the live buggers you got to worry about, not the dead ones. And, and I think
that sounds like that's getting that kind of advice from a grandfather is probably quite significant, because that would have made it all right.
Yeah, and it did, and I love my granddad to bits, and I miss him terribly as well. But that sort of thing was always there for me. So there was never any real fear, and that's why you know, when you see me doing interviews and I hear people talking about, even, you know, on an interview we did with Karen A. Dalman, is that, you know, she's using the Ouija board, and the premise and the thought process behind that and what can happen. And I said to her, I said, I don't believe in evil spirits. I don't believe in it. I've never seen it, and I've been with it for 40 years. And, you know, if they're ever going to come, I would have seen them by now. I don't believe in it. Everything's to do with love. In fact, the evil side of it comes from the humans. Yes, there could be humans who have less residual energy that is, you know, is not great. We need to send that back to the light, because the moment they have their light, then all of that fades away. It's not what we do. So I was never ever worried about the evil or the ghosts or poltergeists or anything like that, because I knew they didn't exist.
Yeah. Interesting. So moving forward with your life, like 20s and 30s and until you know, as you were growing up, do you feel like you took advantage, oh, that's the wrong word, but benefited from the spiritual influences that you had? Would you find yourself talking to your guides in moments of need, or listening to messages, or getting, you know, maybe in your dreams, things happening to help you with your life?
It's funny you should say it. I just, you know, I think it's only recently that as I've grown up, I've had, you know, so many pennies around my feet from all those dropping moments. Is that, you know, when I used to see spirit, and, you know, so I really got back into it when I would have probably been 28, 29, 30, would have been the time when I started to go to development circles, and would have been the first time I would have gone to churches. The first church I used to go to was an SNU church here in Barry in the South Wales. And then the next time, and there's another story which I'll explain to you there, but then I went to another church, which is a Christian spiritualist church in Cadoxton, and I go to the development circle there, and then they moved the circle out to somewhere else, and I used to go there, and I was in development circle for, you know, probably 8 to 10 years. And, you know, I did that, and then I left to go back into spend more time in the corporate world. And then I used to go back to the Cadoxton church, and then I started doing rostrum work. I started doing, you know, special evenings of clairvoyance and mediumship, and all of those things. And I was sort of really truly blessed with the you know, strength of connection that, you know, when I did an evening, you know, the church would be full, you know, they'd be down the sides, and, you know, it would be absolutely packed, which was great, because of the relationship and the connection that I'd built with spirit allowed me to do that. You know, I'm always very mindful, and I don't like the word channel or conduit. I believe I'm very lucky to have a soul and a connection with myself as much as spirit through my soul, and, you know, through all my, you know, chakras and the abilities, spiritual side of things, to be able to have a really strong connection. And I'm pleased that I've worked hard at it, but I'm also very humble the fact I've got it. You know, and church was then important for me. I left work then in my 39, 40. I went to live in Switzerland. So I was working in Geneva, but I was living in France, and again, that's when I sort of, you know, took a bit of a sidestep, if you like, out of spirituality. And then when I came back from Switzerland 3 years ago, you know, I started to really up the ante and move at pace then, really.
So did you feel it was an innate guidance, or did you actually have experiences where your guides would come and say, right, we want you to now do this, we want you to now do that? Like, how's the relationship with your guides in terms of your life plan?
I think the interesting thing with it all was that they didn't really bother me. For long periods of time, I always knew they were there, but they just let me get on. They just let me get on. And I would, one thing I've always done for a very long time, in fact, probably since I had children, is every night I go to bed, I always say, thank you, God, divine spirit, for today. And I always say, you know, thank you for giving me the gift of having the connection with myself and with spirit. But also, if there's anything going to be bad coming of my children, illness or whatever, please give it to me. That's all. It's the one thing I say every night when I go to bed. And touch word, God bless, you know, that it's always been okay. And I'm thanking for looking after my family. But, you know, I think it was always, they were always there, and I'd always thank them. But I'd thank them because they were there when I needed them. They didn't force anything on me. They allowed me to develop myself as a person, learning lots of really strong life experiences, you know, being chucked in at some really serious deep end stuff. And then they were always there if I needed them. But, you know, I would say in the last 4 to 5 years, really, we've started to build a really strong relationship. I'm aware of 3 guides that I have, and now recently a healer who's come in. But, you know, Ronnie and Mayong are 2 guides that I'm with all the time. A 3rd one, I know they're there, but I don't know who they are, but I know who the 4th guide is, a healing guide that's come in recently. But they, you know, I know they're always there. They're always helping me. And I know they've never, like I would like to say for them, they could say for me, it's a 2-way relationship. I've never let them down, and they've never let me down.
So I know I'm kind of harboring on this point a little bit, but I find it really fascinating. So you say they're with you all the time. How do you know they're with you all the time?
Because I sense it. You know, there's part of me here. So this is the way I see it. There's this physical body, which is me. Okay. Then there's a spiritual soul, and my, you know, my 3rd eye and my crown chakra, and my, you know, I talked about it in one of my courses recently, you know, my soul star, my 8th chakra here. I know Ronnie is always by there. Okay. He's always at 1 o'clock. All right. And I know if I close my eyes and ask him to come near, he will come near. I always know he's there. He's only ever a thought away. And it's not as if like, oh, he's not there, he's gone to the shop, is he? You know, there's none of that. He's always there. So when I send out, you know, I joke sometimes with him. It's like the Commissioner Gordon bat lamp. You know what I mean? Up goes the bat light, and Batman comes running. You know, and it's that big red phone that Commissioner Gordon used to use. And that's, we have a joke about it, but that's, you know, that red phone is always there. I can just pick it up and say, Ronnie, we're off. What are we doing? And it helps. And I have to say though that very rarely do I ever use it for myself. And I think that's an area I need to improve on. I need to start to sit for myself a little bit more, because at the moment I'm quite selfless. So a lot of the stuff that I use in my guides, you know, I spent all day the other day, you know, doing readings, and where I've changed now, the modality of those readings can be from healing to trance to psychic work to mediumistic work to, you know, all of these different bits, and meditations and guided meditation. I roll all that in now. So there's never, you know, nobody comes to me just for a reading anymore. We end up doing, you know, 5 or 6 different things, which I think is hugely important. But what I always do is, before that person walks in, I sit for, you know, I can very much into the power meditation very quickly. And I still don't know why I click my fingers, but it does, and it just takes me down. But I get into that power meditation very quickly. And I say to my guides there and then, I want you to give me everything, every tool I need to give the person in front of me whatever they need right here, right now. So that's the conversation I have. I don't sit there thinking, oh, am I going to get a message for this person? What's going to happen next? I already set it with my guides. The intention, which is, you know, hugely important now, is to set that intention to say, when I'm doing a sitting, when I'm doing a rostrum work, when I'm doing anything, is you need to give me the tools and the ability to help those people that are in front of me what they need right here, right now. And that's the sort of level of relationship that I've built with my guides, and that's the sort of requests I have. They're always there. I can call upon them now, and Ronnie would easier anyway. So you know, they are always there for me.
Right. Okay. So just want to kind of touch on something that you talked about then. This sense of the kind of 1 o'clock thing you talked about earlier.
Yep.
Is that something that you've kind of grown to know over time, or is it something that you heard at a workshop that you work out, you know, where your guides are? Like, how did that information, that knowledge, that know-how establish itself in your being, as it were?
I think one thing about me is I'm very much about systems and procedures and structures and people. You know, any corporate business, and I've, you know, again, I've sort of run £50 million companies with 300 people in them. So, you know, I'm always about, I think it's about systems, it's about processes, and it's about people. And I always think of spirit as people. I don't think of them as anything else. My guide is a person. The people I contact in spirit are people. And I know, you know, people contacting spirit. I think we do it because it differentiates me saying I'm contacting people. People probably expect me to pick my phone up. But, you know, I'm contacting spirit, which I see as people. So I need systems and processes for me to be able to consistently do what I do. I think if we don't have some of those things in, and yes, it can be intuitive, and yes, it can flow, but to get the levels of connection and consistency you need to be doing the similar sort of thing that you know that works for you. I'll caveat that with, I don't think that there is a right way or a wrong way for spiritualism. There's your way. And I think that's something that's very, very interesting. And I always teach that, you know, spiritualism and spirituality is very much like your thumbprint. We all have one, but they're all very different and very unique. So although I can, you know, and we talked about before, but, you know, I do a lot of courses now, and I do a lot of development groups and mentorship and, you know, courses on Udemy and like yourself. And I think the comment that I always get back is that what I talk about is very simple, but yet very powerful. And because it's simple, it can then be replicated several times and consistently. So, you know, if I'm going to give you an A to Z of how to connect with spirit, it could be too much. And then you forget point 6, point 2, point 1, you know, and it's not about that. So for me, building that process and structure and then putting spirit and people in it, you know, was hugely important, because then it allows me to consistently, you know, deliver in terms of the messages and the connection with myself and with spirit as well. So, you know, I just developed that and designed that myself. But, you know, they're always here, you know, they're always, if you like, you know, just off the top of my right eye, you know.
Right. Interesting. So, I'm also interested to know, because you haven't talked about this, and wonder whether this has come up in part of your journey, whether you've had access to or experience of not just spirit guides, but earth energies, or animal spirit guides, or any other of the many different things that kind of come with the sensitivity that you have.
It's quite funny, and you talk about animals and all things like that. And one thing that that I say, I'm not, you know, some people specialize in certain areas and see things more than others. I'm fully aware, and I firmly believe in angels, but angels are not, you know, something that, you know, others at the forefront of my work. I know they're there, I know they help, and I ask, you know, sometimes certain angels to come down if I need certain things at certain times, but I don't, you know, I don't use them every day in the same way I think of Ronnie at 1 o'clock, if you like. I don't do that. And with animals and things like that, yes, I work and I see animals. I also now probably appreciate animals more than ever. And I also, you know, working with nature and working in those environments, I think it gives me, you know, I like to go and kick the leaves, so to speak, sometimes if my physical life gets a much, you know, I'm talking here as if, you know, Julian Jenkins' life has been a, you know, a pleasant lineage movement that is completely faultless. But you take it from me, you know, there's been, you know, like everybody, I suppose, I'm no different to anybody else. There's been highs, and there's been many highs and many lows. An equal and opposite, really. But, you know, the ability to go out into nature and do those things and be with animals. Have I ever had, you know, when I do my development or anything like that, working specifically with animals? I'd have to say no. That's not to say, you know, I was doing a reading on Tuesday, and I had a lady's father that was talking about her and her family, and all I kept hearing was Bonnie, 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 Bonnie. And I said, I just, you know, I don't know whether he's saying Bonnie for you, or I just keep hearing Bonnie. And as she said, just before she opened her mouth, I saw this dog, and I was like, got it. And she went, you won't believe that. She said, Bonnie was my father's dog who died a week before he passed. Right. And so although I work with, I see dogs and you know, from a spiritual level, I don't work with dogs or animals per se. I'm just, if I'm being honest, I work with my guides. I work with people in spirit, and that's where I work, really.
Yeah, I find it really fascinating with different people who have gone through a deepening or expansion of their spirituality, that they find themselves attracted to or comfortable with certain areas. And that's why I asked, really, because it seems like for you it's very much about people. It's about relationships and people. So you don't need a big power animal to guide you through your darker moments, or you don't, you know, you're not necessarily tuning into, you know, whatever it is, you know, fairies or dwarves or angels or whatever. And some people do. Some people use that frequency, that vibration, to do their work. But it seems with you, it's very, very grounded. It's very much about just the day-to-day. Here's your person. They need healing. Their family's coming through. It's a very, you know, it's a very people-based path that you've had, and it sounds like also you've had kind of quite a social people type experience in life, working in a team as a football player, having big companies. It's all very kind of people-based, which is just an interesting reflection, really, for me, because you do find so many different types and they work in so many different ways. So
yeah, I think you're right. I'm very much a people person. I'm all about the people. I've always said that. And again, I'm always as well sort of reticent to label certain things. So, you know, I'm not saying I'll never work with animals. I'm saying currently it's not at the forefront of what I'm doing. It's like I'll never, you know, say I don't work with angels, you know. And again, I think it's that, and that's some things I teach, actually, because when people come to me, I said I don't ever understand the word impossible or can't or any of those words. You know, people come to me and say, you know, oh yeah, you know, I'm trying mediumship. I can't see. I can never see things, never hear things. And I'm like, well, it's because you're setting an intention. Why wouldn't you just come here and see what happens? And also, you know, all right, today you can't see something, but who's to say not tomorrow there may be a breakthrough? So, you know, I never write anything off or label anything, because, you know, one thing I do know is not only does change happen, but change of the change happens as well. And that's, you know, that's something we work with every day, really.
Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And it also makes sense in terms of your mission. I know you've talked to me about your mission for a centre and empowering people, working with people, healing people, getting them to on their spiritual journey, encouraging them to develop and stuff like that. And so it would be great to just hear a little bit about your mission and where is Julian Jenkins going in terms of this healing, mediumship, opening, expansion, people's path.
I think I believe in synchronicity. I believe in you meet people for a reason. There's a book that's a little bit, you know, far-fetched, and it tells a story, but it's got a lot of morals in it. Is the Celestine prophecy, and it talks a lot about. Yeah, it's a good book. The film's not as good, but then again, there's not many films as good as the book anyway. So, but you know, it's it talks about synchronicity and meeting people and things like that. I think we're a lot stronger together, and I think things happen in people's lives. You know, I believe that a lot of things happen for reasons. I do believe, though, that free will and the ability to, you know, when I leave here now and I go outside, am I going to turn left? Am I going to turn right? Well, that's entirely up to me. And I get that spirit can influence, and I get that God has given us all the tools to live a very happy and to deliver on the agenda or the purpose we were put here for. But I also believe that we meet people for a reason, and things happen for reasons. So, you know, all I want to do is, I firmly believe in spirituality and spiritualism. Okay. And what do I mean by that? Well, I believe that the more people have more patience, the more people are more empathetic, the more people look after themselves and value themselves, the more people value others. All of these things will make this place a lot nicer to live. That's just living spiritually. You know, if people don't believe or want to understand the aspects of communication with spirit and the afterlife, then that's entirely up to them. I've never been a preacher. I believe that, you know, everyone's within their right to understand, and I'll have conversations with people who want to have conversations. I'll never force my beliefs on anybody else. So I believe in people. I believe the only way we're going to turn this around is by investing in people and helping people, but also trying to get people to snap out of things, you know, because we all live this really fast-paced life. I'm a firm believer that the fast has never been so fast. Okay. And the need and desire to sometimes come out of that hamster wheel, whirlwind, you know, autopilot, whatever you want to call it, is so important. And how are you going to do that? Well, you need people who care. You need people who are there for others. You need to be able to have that ability to create these sacred spaces, these sacred experiences, and understand some of the fundamental rudiments of people and their feelings and energies and things like that. And so when I talk about a wellness center, or a spiritual college, there's a number of things in there that for me can help people every day of their lives, even if they don't believe in mediumship, or they don't believe in synchronicity. They don't believe anything, to be honest with you. All they need to understand is that some of the scientific information that's coming out, and it's going to be more prevalent than ever, is that, you know, switching off, focusing on your breath, meditation, you know, doing these things is good for you, you know, and everything else then you can bolt on. You know, the spiritual center and the wellness center and the college that I would like to build, you know, will be non-religious. You know, that will be it. It'll be all about spirituality. That's not to say if people come in and believe in God. I believe that people will walk through the door with rosemary beads. I believe people will walk through the door with crystals, you know, and that's the way it is. I think that everybody is welcome, and nobody's naive enough to not think otherwise, as long as everybody respects and trusts their own, you know, modalities, ideas, beliefs, religions, whatever you want to call it. So, you know, for me, being able to build a space where people can come and be is hugely important. Bolt on top of that then are the things that, you know, I think fundamentally need to be there, albeit, you know, if we're doing, you know, a weekend or a week course of evidential mediumship, I'm probably going to think that most people walk in will have some form of spiritual awareness or have some interest in spirituality, and those sort of things will be important to me. So it's about getting people together. It's about helping people to, you know, live in the world that we live in today, but also then to help them spiritually expand their minds and understand that, you know, again, my three things that I talk about all the time is be love, look after yourself, give love, look after others, and provide evidence of everlasting love is all down the mediumship side of things.
So community, very important. You mentioned synchronicities earlier. So tell me more about where you were headed with that.
Well, synchronicity is a funny thing. Okay. And I'll give you a story. All right. So I've told you a little bit about my life and where I was and where I was going, and I kept my spirituality very, very close to my chest. So close, in fact, that lots of my family didn't know anything about it. Okay. So my wife obviously did, but my children did a bit, but nobody else really knew about it. And so I used to go to an SNU church in Barry, and it was a Sunday, and I completely forgot the time. So I went to the church at about 6:15, and it was closed because the doors were closed. The service was on. It started at 6 o'clock. So I was like, right, okay, where am I going to go now? So I went on my phone and Googled, you know, spiritualist churches in the Vale of Glamorgan, and it popped Cannockston Spiritualist Church. I'll go there. It starts up at 6. So I went to this church, sat down, was made to feel hugely welcome. It was a beautiful little tin hut. You know, it was a traditional Welsh, you know, church, really, if you like. And it was great. I enjoyed it. I went back. Met somebody who was in the development circle, went back to that, went to that. It was all great. did lots of work on the rostrum, would help raise money for funds, would donate stuff, etc., etc. Would do the evenings. It was all good. Nobody really knew they didn't know Julian Jenkins Part A. They knew Julian Jenkins Part B. And then I went to Switzerland, and I was there for 3 years, running a year, but it was all in all sort of nearly 2 years. And then I went back to church, and I hadn't been back to church now, bear in mind, for about 4 years. All right. So I walked through the door on the very first night, and they were like, "Hi, Julian, how are you? It's great to see you, blah, 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 blah." I was like, "Yeah, it's great to be back." I thought I'd come. Sat in the seat. Guess what happened? The medium didn't turn up. So they popped their head around the corner and said, "Would you do the service?" I said, You're joking, didn't you?" I said, "I haven't done anything spiritually for 4 years. You want me to get up on the rostrum? I don't even know." And I sat there and I just thought, "Oh, come on." So I just went to Ronnie, "Come on, Ron, we're not going to sit down tonight. We've got to get up and get on with it." So we got up and got on with it. So I'm on this rostrum now, giving messages, and who should walk in and sit in the back row but my brother.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm giving messages, and of course, touch wood and thank the Lord and everything else. Evidentially, they're very good, and I'm making connections and doing what I'm doing, and everything's fine. And at the end, my brother, I can see him now. He's like, every sort of 10 minutes, his jaw is getting lower and lower and lower. And I got off the stage, and he came up to me and said, and he's a lovely lad. He's very Cardiff. So he said, "Bruv, I didn't know you did this." And I said, "Yeah, Rob." I said, He said, "I can't believe it." He said, "This was mine and Dad's church."
Oh, wow.
And I said, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, this is the church me and Dad used to come to spook school in." I said, "You're joking?" I said, "I didn't know that." He said, "Yeah, this is where we used to." He said, "Dad used to sit over by there." And I didn't have a clue. I really, really didn't have a clue. So when you talk about synchronicity, and my brother had lost his wife at that stage through cancer, so he was coming back to the church to get some solace and to try and help his life spiritually. It was incredible, and it just sort of span out from there, really. But I can remember him saying to me when I got off the stage, he said, "If Jeremy Beadle was still alive," he said he would have expected him to walk out with a camera saying, "Got you," but he didn't. And so synchronicity works in so many ways. I was always destined to go to that church. Right. I was always destined to be part of that church. Without knowing it, it was my dad's church, and that was special. And bear in mind, there was my father probably went past 5 churches for where he lived to go to that church. So it wasn't as if like, oh yeah, it was going to be your dad's church because it was around the corner. It wasn't. Right. So it was very, very.
Played a big part in your life. It sounds like it's guiding you and continues to play a big part in your life. And I asked you a question about your mission and kind of where you're headed. So I guess what you're really saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're going to leave it up to the synchronicities, and that will kind of unfold your path for you.
Definitely. We haven't got to the point yet where I think there was a big fundamental change in my life in terms of spirituality was in August when I went to Arthur Findlay for the first time. And for a number of reasons. One, that I spiritually came out the closet on the Thursday before I went to Arthur Findlay on the Friday. And then also being around, seeing the level, the quality, the standard of the teaching, the teachers, the atmosphere, the people, all of those things really sort of, if you like, went, this is good. I like this. And that was a major thing for me to change all of those ideas. And, it really was a big moment for me for a number of reasons. One, it did change my life. Two, I had come out of the closet before I even got there. But thirdly, we talk about your connection with your guides and that. A lot of the stuff that I had been downloaded or being given advice to by my guides, Arthur Findlay was so important because what it did do is it rubber stamped a lot of it. Right. So it allowed me to, really sort of go, yeah, it confirmed a lot of the stuff that I'd sort of been taught. And there's a lot of people now, even when I read sort of books, Gordon Higginson's book or whatever, but they talk about spirit being the greatest teacher of all. And actually most of it, sort of 80% of the stuff that I understood in terms of mediumship and spiritualism and spirituality was all from spirit.
Yeah.
So what's going to Arthur Findlay did, it sort of, you know, it allowed me to ratify, if you like, if that's the right word, ratify and confirm a lot of the things that had happened in my life, and a lot of the teachings that I had. So, you know, for me, it was that, you know, developing understanding and classification as well about, you know, you are in the right way. What you do see and what you do feel and the way in which you conduct yourself was certainly the right way around. And, you know, in many ways, that was a big game changer for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And from that, because that's where we met, you went back home and all of a sudden, boom, 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 your vision of the wellness centre, that's the spirit. You started doing more readings, it sounds like. It just went boom, that moment. It's like everything came together. All your teachings, all your learnings, all your lessons seemed to catalyse in that moment and activate some kind of momentum, which you're riding on now.
Yeah, it did. I think what it did
as well.
Yeah, no, all of it. Yeah, all of that teaching side of it. I think one of the big things for me was I was always, when my dad passed away 10 years ago, that's when I first had the vision of the wellness center. And they told me lots of things about the wellness center, and I was like, right, okay. But of course, my physical life got in the way. So I wasn't allowed to do it so much. But then when I came back, and I sort of, if you like, that week at Arthur Findlay had raised my vibration, which allowed me to amplify a lot of the stuff that I was doing. My connection and my understanding of spirit was a lot greater, which then allowed me to download a lot. It was like as if, you know, I'd upgraded my broadband, if you like. I've gone from dial-up to, you know, to fiber, and I was downloading so much more, so much quickly. And that's then when all these things started to change, and I thought, right, I've got to do this. And you know, I can remember being in Arthur Findlay and Simone Key, who was a really tough but great teacher, who we've been blessed to have on the show. She said, well, you know, when we first started, why is everyone here? Why are you on this course? I was in the advanced course of evidential mediumship. And again, because my life has always been about corporate and about football, I said that, you know, from a football standpoint, I wanted to play football with some of the best footballers in the world. And that for me was very much where we were. I had an outstanding group of people who I'm all very friendly with and have met since. And, you know, God bless her, Audrey, I was speaking to her today. You know, and I can help pass on advice and help there. But, you know, it really did allow me to play football with some of the best footballers in the world. It allowed me to dine at the top table with some people, you know, the likes of Tony Stockwell and Lynn Probert, were just outstanding. And they sort of, as I said, it comes back to the point of they ratified a lot of my beliefs and a lot of my understanding, which has now allowed me really to kick on with a lot more confidence and belief in terms of myself. The big thing, though, and this is the game changer, is that my faith is now stronger than my belief. And my faith, when somebody believes in something, there has to be something tangible for them to believe in it. When you have faith, it's that understanding of the untangible, that you don't always see it and feel it, but you keep going with it. And there was a guy called David, who watches the show quite a bit. He might be watching tonight. And every morning I'd get up and go and sit. He'd be sat on the outside bench, and I'd go and say, hi, mate, how are you? And we'd have a quick conversation. I'd go and have some breakfast, a cup of coffee or something. And I asked him the question, and he'd done some amazing things with his life, taking his children to Ireland and all these sort of things. And I said, didn't it worry you? Didn't it, your materialistic pressures and he said, no. He said, I'm just following the string. And straight away, it was just like I had this picture in my mind of me with this piece of string, you know. And after that moment, it really, and he probably didn't realize how life changing that one sentence was. But I'm following the string. So, you know, do I worry? Do I care about things? Of course I do, you know. But I'm being honest with you, the only things I worry about is the safety and health of my family. Everything else I don't worry about. you know, and that's not because, you know, people might think, oh yeah, he's got businesses, he's got this, and I have financial constraints and issues like everybody else. But you know, I'm just following the string, and I've said it many times now, I could pretty much lose everything as long as I have my family and their health. I could stand in a field naked with nothing and wouldn't worry.
Good. I hope you're not one of those many spiritual people out there that put other people first to the detriment of themselves, because we want you to be a strong and healthy, a beacon out there in the world doing all your things. So I would just, you know, include in that little prayer at the end of the night, please, you know, look after my kids and make sure they don't have any kind of illness. Not I'll take it on for them or anything like that. I just want to encourage you to really look after yourself.
I know it's hard though, isn't it? I just in those instances I'm really selfless. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So I know that we are approaching, well, it's Christmas basically, and it's the Festival of Lights, it's Christmas, and also it's that time of year, the solstice has just been, where we have to bring light to the dark times. And you said earlier, you talked, and that was really beautiful, about how you have increased your faith, and it's not about belief for you, it's about faith. So I just wanted to ask you to just wrap up with a few words about what you feel faith is all about. I mean, you have said a lot of things, but just wrap it up. And how you would want people to go forward into a new year and strengthen their faith. I know you said you're not a preacher, but actually you are, and you do a really good job of it in the best possible way. So do a little bit of preaching on how we can bring light.
Yeah, I think, again, for me, it's a saying that I use quite a lot. I don't believe in darkness. I just think there's an absence of light. And, you know, I think if we shine light in any corner, it will always become brighter. Christmas is a wonderful time. My favorite day of the year, without even a shadow of a thought, and my family will tell you, is Christmas Eve. I absolutely adore Christmas Eve because, you know, hopefully that's the time where you can just sit back and just be and breathe. You've done everything. Your kids, or no matter how old they are, they're all really excited about the next day. I'm excited about, you know, spending some quality time with my family, all around the table, having some food and a bit of drink, and also, without sounding too religious, also then just remembering the real reason that we're here at Christmas, and you know, just thank God and thank Jesus and everything else that came around, you know, and the birth of Christ. And, you know, for me, that's, although I've never been really religious, I've always had those moments of just saying thank you. How can we take things forward in the new year? What would be my preaching, if you like? I think, look, one thing I know for certain is that life is not easy. Okay, life is difficult. I have my ups and downs. I have my good days and my bad days. You know, my wife sometimes, when I snap, and we all snap, don't we? You know, we get tired or whatever. And she says, "You're meant to be a guru." She said, "You're not meant to be. You're not meant to snap. You're meant to be." She calls me the Zen master. Okay, but we do, don't we? Because life is that way, and you know. Yeah. But it's about for me. 2019 needs to be a few things. It needs to have more tolerance with people. We need to have, you know, a lot more sympathy and have to be more empathetic and have more patience with people. Just realize that, you know, some people are the way they are because, you know, that's the way they are. And, you know, warts and all, we need to love those people and help them, you know, be who they need to be. Because I think far too many times we try and change people to be people they're not going to be, and they need to be the people they are going to be. I hope that, you know, some of the uncertainty and in the political sphere that's happening at the moment, you know, I very rarely talk about politics because, again, I think it's something for, you know, for your living room rather than the open space. But I hope we can, you know, get Brexit sorted. I hope, you know, the president of America leaves, and all those things. So I hope all of that comes. But one thing we've got to be able to do, and this is something for me anyway, is that, you know, we can talk about Donald Trump or Putin or Brexit or, you know, the worries and issues we're having in North Korea or wherever in the world. We have to control the controllable. Okay. We can only control what we can control. And that means, you know, our world, our backyards, our front doorsteps, our family, our patients, ours. And the more we can become better people by being love and giving love, is those vibrations will raise, that will make things better. Am I still going to get up in the morning sometimes, snub my toe and say a foul word? Probably yes, of course I am. I'm not sat here preaching to be the Mr. Perfect, because I'm far from it. But I'm a human as much as anything else, and I get it. So for me, in 2019, just have a bit more patience with people. Don't
we'll talk more about that. We'll talk more about in our New Year special. We're going to be going into detail about 2019. So we definitely will be doing that. Just before we finish, I want to draw people's attention to your Udemy courses, and
thank you.
Let people know that you are up there in the list of what is it? What's your latest achievement?
Well,
show off a little bit here, please.
I'm surprised you mentioned it. No,
you didn't pay me.
Udemy was something that I came across, and it's a great online. It's an opportunity for people to learn online at a reasonable price. Okay, there are 626 mediumship courses, and currently I'm ranked number 1. Which for me is fantastic. I've had over 100 students now, and again, when you do things, and you always do it, don't you, from your eye, and you think, oh, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? You know, and I have to say, mostly every morning when I wake up, there's an email from somebody somewhere saying thank you. And that ability to be able to do that, and for those people to say that is so special. And you know, they talk about things like, you know, authenticity and simplicity and connection and power, and you know, and being real, if you like, and not all of this, some of this airy fairy stuff, is what I try and preach. And you know, I'm very blessed. The one course is the highest rated. My other course now is hot and new. So again, that's going forward, and I've had 6 reviews on that one, all 5 stars. So again, I'm really pleased of the response it's had. But I have to say is that 99.9% of those courses have been channeled from spirit. So again, you know, I take that in and I understand it. I turn that information into knowledge. And then I pass that knowledge on through those courses. So, you know, for me, Udemy's been amazing for a number of reasons. One, you know, it's been great for me to actually put something down and put something out there. And hopefully, you know, it's that people are enjoying it. Secondly, you know, the response has been nothing short of staggering for me. And the word life changing, I'm not just saying it, and has been used on several occasions. And, you know, I only needed to do it once, and I've fulfilled my purpose.
Absolutely. It seems like this is definitely spirit driven, and that they want you out there getting the message.
Yeah, well,
that's really wonderful.
Fingers crossed, long may it continue.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so I've just put up a Udemy course which is about sacred relationships, soulmates, twin flames, and one of the things I talked about is soul kin. And soul kin is, you know, your tribe, you know, people who you have a strong connection to. And that's what happened with us when we met. And I can see that that doing this interview is really, really great. And it shows me that we have so much in common, and that I know that there's lots of people out there that are listening today that feel like they found their tribe, they found their soul kin just by listening in here to That's the Spirit. And which is, I know when we talked about it, one of the points of having this show is that you can build community, and that people can feel like they have somewhere to feel like they're home. So thank you for doing that again. And we will continue to do that, and we will talk more about what 2019 holds for our tribe,